Towards the end of junior high, you joined a well-known crew, U.C.L.A. How were you introduced to that unit?
That's a great question. So my homie Noe, he wrote so many graffiti names. His last major name was Skiz. He moved out to New York and he came back. He was from BM. He was in my grade, but his brothers were OGs from FCT and BMF, and they were very known for their hand styles and all that shit. So he came from a family that had a lot of history and graffiti and LA culture, and he would kick me down with all this info and all this shit. And so he had put down, or not he, his crew had put down two kids. One wrote Scome and one wrote J-Rock. And J-Rock was a 7th grader, and he came to my school and he's like, yo, we're gonna start kicking it with this kid. He's from my crew. So he automatically became part of our little clique of graffiti writers. And he told me, you know, one day after a few weeks, he's like, hey, we're gonna start a new crew called U.C.L.A. We're gonna have our first meeting in a few weeks. You should come. I'm like, all right, cool. You know, some guys from LA High, basically, some guys from Bancroft, and those dudes from LAS crew. Some guys were from NHD, and some guys were from, what else? BMF, which was a random coincidence because those crews kind of later all kind of had beef, but at the time, there was no beef, you know? And I think there was only like 6 of us when it started. Definitely Scome, J-Rock, myself, Gary, which wrote Damas at the time, this other Russian kid that wrote Besk, not Besk from UCA, some other kid, and A+. A+ was there, and he's still, I think, the main head. He still runs UCLA, if I'm not mistaken. So we were all like there at the first meeting, and I was repping it for at least 2 years until I got into Fairfax, and then the crew got so big that I didn't feel really like part of it anymore. I felt like it was its own thing, so I kind of just stepped away.
What does U.C.L.A. stand for?
It has a few names. I remember back in the day, it was Uncontrollables was the first name that I remember. But then we had a bunch of stupid, like You Can Lick Ass and Us Controlling Los Angeles. It had a bunch of different spin-off names, but Uncontrollables was the original one that I remember.
Do you remember going to your first U.C.L.A. meeting? Where would you have those meetings?
Yeah, we used to have those at the farmer's market at 3rd and Fairfax. And I was probably like 14, and I would steal my mom's car. I knew where they had their main car, and they had like a second car, which was a Burgundy Cougar. I think it was like, I forgot who made, like a Buick. I don't know, it was a piece of shit. It was a hoopty, and they'd park it like a few blocks away from the house, and I knew where they hid the keys. So I'd steal the keys, and I'd roll down there with my homie Gary, and then we'd have the meeting, and then everybody would get back in my car, like 6 or 7 deep, and we'd come back to like Universal City Walk to like smoke weed and shit until we got kicked out. But yeah, I was doing a lot of underage driving back then, and the meetings, the first at least 3 or 4 UCLA meetings were at that 3rd and Fairfax. Now they got the Grove there and all that shit, but none of that shit was there. It was just a pretty quiet little family market.
Did you ever get caught stealing the car or pulled over by the cops?
Not that car, but a few years later, my mom had so she sold that car and she had another little Suzuki Samurai. And when I was in junior high, I remember I stole that thing and we went up to the City Walk again because it wasn't too far from the house and there wasn't too much shit to do. And it was a stick, and I was going up the hill and the sheriffs pulled up behind me. And when the light turned green, I hit it and I hit the corner, but I looked in the rearview mirror and he said that he saw my eyes and that it looked like a baby. So as soon as I turned the corner, whoop, whoop, he flashed us up. And not only was I underage driving, but I had a pocket full of mushrooms. And so we were arrested, and I got put on probation for like 4 years. From when I was 15 or till I was 18 years old, I was in probation for getting caught, underage driving, possession of mushrooms.
What do your parents say when they find out you got busted?
They were not happy, it was that weird thing where I'm telling you, like, I had good grades and I was excelling and doing good and all my regular life shit. I was just, getting into trouble. My parents, they try to be disciplinarian, but they themselves kind of were into sometimes illicit shit and stuff that was kind of not necessarily like okay. So I feel like they felt kind of hypocritical being too harsh on me. They were worried, my mom would cry and she's like, Mijo, what are you doing? Why are you fucking up? But, she respected me and she gave me my space, and she realized like if she came down too hard, it would just get worse. So she just like, come on, do better, don't fuck up. And she would tell me shit like, just don't get caught. If you're gonna fuck around and do all this shit, like don't get in trouble, be smarter, be slick, So they weren't happy. I definitely got in trouble, but it wasn't like too harsh, like I get grounded for a week or two and then I was back out doing my shit,